All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a book that has, well, it's fascinated and terrified people for centuries, the Book of Revelation. But here's a thought. What if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if it's not some crystal ball for predicting the future, but a practical guide for surviving the present?
For literally centuries, Revelation has had this reputation for being confusing, to say the least. Controversial for sure. There's this old saying about it that I think just nails it. It will either find you mad or leave you mad. And that really captures how people feel, right? It's been dismissed as everything from a bizarre jumble of symbols to a farrago of baseless fantasy. And this reputation, it tends to split people into two main groups. On one side, you've got the fearful, the folks who see all the wild imagery and just decide, nope, not for me, and they leave the book alone. But then, on the other side, you've got the fanatical. These are the people who get so deep into the symbols that they can't seem to find their way out, They're busy making charts and timetables, trying to pinpoint the exact date for the end of the world. Okay, but what if we've got the whole premise wrong? What if the book wasn't meant to be some kind of riddle or a puzzle box for us to solve thousands of years later? What if it was actually something way more practical? Think of it like a survival manual, written for regular people dealing with some absolutely extraordinary circumstances way back in the first century. To really get it, you have to know who this was written for. And here's the thing, this wasn't some high-level academic paper for theologians. Nope. It was written for the people in 7 small communities in what we now call Western Turkey. These were everyday folks. Many of them were slaves, just trying to live their lives under the crushing weight of the Roman Empire. And this is really the key. If it was written for them, it had to be something they could understand. And that tells us the best way to approach it is with just plain old common sense. I mean, when you read about a scarlet woman sitting on a dragon, your common sense kicks in and says, okay, that's a picture, that's a symbol. But other parts, they're meant to be taken at face value. It's a mix for sure, but it's not meant to be impossible to figure out. Now, to really get to the heart of its purpose, we have to step back in time and feel the immense, and I mean immense, pressure these people were under. This book wasn't written in some peaceful library. It was forged in the fire of a life-or-death crisis of loyalty that was boiling over across the entire Roman Empire. So where did this pressure come from? Well, it had been building for decades. It really started with Julius Caesar, who was the first emperor to call himself divine. Then his successor, Augustus, he took it up a notch, demanding temples be built to worship him. But by the time Revelation was written, around 96 AD, the Emperor Domitian had taken this whole emperor worship thing to a terrifying new level. He was demanding that everyone call him Lord and God. And to enforce this, Domitian set up an annual event. He called it the Lordy Day. This was one day a year where every single person in the empire had to show up and publicly prove where their ultimate loyalty was. And the test itself? It was so simple. Deceptively so. All you had to do was walk up to a bust of the emperor, take just a little pinch of incense, burn it on an altar, and say 3 little words. Caesar is Lord. That's it. But if you refused, well, that could cost you your business, your freedom, or even your life. You can see how this created an absolutely impossible situation for the early Christians, right? Because their earliest, most fundamental belief, their creed, was Jesus is Lord. They believed that title, that honor, belonged to him and him alone. And now all of a sudden the government was demanding they give that very same title to a man. It was a direct clash of loyalties, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. So that's where Revelation comes in. It was written to give these believers the strength not just to get through this test, not just to survive it, but to actually triumph over it. It's a call to be more than just a survivor. It's a call to be a conqueror. And you see this in the key word that's repeated all through the book. It's not endure, it's overcome. And believe me, there is a huge difference. To endure something means you're under the pressure, right? You're just gritting your teeth and getting through it. But to overcome, that means getting on top of the pressure. It means being victorious over the whole situation, just like they believed Jesus had overcome the world. So, how in the world do you get on top of that kind of pressure? Well, the book gives them this incredibly powerful tool, hope. And I'm not talking about some vague, wishy-washy kind of hope. No, this is a certain, solid knowledge of what's coming. This kind of hope acts like an anchor for your soul, holding you steady and secure, even when the storms of persecution are just raging all around you. And this hope, it wasn't just some abstract idea. It came with very specific promised rewards for anyone who overcomes. And these were not small things, let me tell you. They were promised everything from eating from the tree of life in paradise to being given authority to rule over nations. But the ultimate incentive, the biggest prize of all, the right to sit with Jesus on his throne.
So Revelation gives them this anchor of hope by doing something pretty remarkable. It gives them the final chapter to the entire story of the Bible. It ties everything together and shows them exactly how it all ends. Think about it this way. First, you can see the Bible as one long history book, right? It kicks off at the very beginning of the universe in Genesis. It takes us all through the middle parts, but without Revelation, we'd be left hanging. We wouldn't know how the story actually ends. This book completes that history. It shows us the final destination. Or here's another way to look at it, as a grand romance story. Seriously, it's the story of a father trying to find a bride for his son. And all through the story, the bride is betrothed. She's engaged. But a story that just ends with an engagement feels unfinished, doesn't it? Well, Revelation gives us the wedding. It gives us the marriage supper of the Lamb and the real happily ever after. Now, this whole idea of Revelation being the final chapter, it has a really fascinating implication. It's been said that there are two parts of the Bible that are the most fought over, the first 3 chapters and the last 3. And why is that? Well, because the beginning tells us how all the trouble, sin, and death got into the world, and the end tells us how it's all going to get kicked out for good. And that really shines a light on just how unique this book is. I mean, it is the only book in the entire Bible that starts with a specific blessing for those who read it out loud and really take it to heart, and then it closes with a severe curse for anyone who tries to add to it or take away from its words. That's just how vital its message was believed to be. So when you stop seeing Revelation as this impossible puzzle and start seeing it for what it was, a survival guide, it kind of forces you to ask a tough question. If this was a call for them to overcome the immense pressures of their day, what does it mean for us to be overcomers today? What are the pressures in our lives that we're being called to get on top of? Now, in our next explainer, we're going to start digging into the very specific personal messages that were sent to those 7 churches, the ones right at the absolute heart of this whole struggle. These letters were the opening act of this incredible survival guide. We'll see you then.